our talk on visibility tonight. We have speaking, who will be leading this session, is our Janeiro Bullard, who will take us through visibility. Please note the session will be recorded.
Hello, good day. My name is Janeiro Bullard, and I would like to thank Alexis and the Pride Foundation for allowing me the opportunity to present this topic of visibility and what it means to the LGBTQ community. Now, before I start, I'd like to share with you, if I can, a video clip, and hopefully this works as intended. Okay, I think you're gonna have to mute your mic. Oh, I got it.
Janeiro, there's no audio for the video.
Thanks. 1 second. I don't know. I'm trying to see why I saw. I saw it asked me it earlier about sharing the audio from. Does it make a difference?
No, we're not seeing or hearing anything.
Okay, well, okay, my apologies. But so basically, what the video is about, it basically shares the story of the LGBTQ community from a African American standpoint and how it is so diverse and divergent to that of the experiences of, for example, their white counterparts. And it complicated the whole theory of just coming out and being visible. So it's just not simply satisfying those who may have questions about coming out or being visible. It also delved into the importance of persons who want to get answers about persons who are a part of the LGBTQ community, showing a profound willing to understand and to want to really know for legitimate reasons and understand the persons who are members of the LGBTQ community. Because rightfully so, persons who are members of the community, they face a great degree of stigma and discrimination. And it is not as easy as saying, you know, I am, I mean, certain cultures, it's not as easy as saying I'm Black. And, you know, you compound with saying I'm Black and gay, or I am Black and lesbian, or I'm Black and transgender. But it was an interesting, just an interesting clip that I came across, and I want to use that to, as an icebreaker to get into what we're going to discuss tonight, which is visibility. And you know, for a lot of persons, visibility may just simply mean, you know, being visible. Persons being able to identify as being gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, queer, transgender, or intersex. But you know, being visible, it's a lot more dynamics than that. You're being visible doing what? And so we want to discuss the responsibility of those who are visible in the community and how you can either compound um, biases and stigma that may be out there already, or you can actually dispel the same stigma and discrimination that exists. Um, so firstly, I want to ask, I know it may be a little bit more difficult since we're doing this by Zoom, but I'm looking at the chat, and I guess, is there anybody who, I mean, would have gone through the coming out experience and they would wish to share? No? I mean, inevitably I was going to share my coming out experience, but I mean, I wanted to get the, you know, different angle or someone else to contribute to the discussion, to lead off especially. No one? I mean, by the way, is anybody, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so firstly, my coming out experience was a lot different from the ideal. I was one of the persons who fell into the outed category, and outed meaning that the colloquial term and the jargon, and even in the healthcare profession, being outed normally refers to when someone is, their sexual preference is um, being, I guess, put out there outside of their control. It's not something that is controlled, and not something that is planned or, you know, strategic. But unfortunately, in instances, there are persons or circumstances that allow for persons to be outed. And I can say for me, unfortunately, I was on the quote unquote DL, or in my head, DL. um, and unfortunately, someone saw the need to share some information with my parents. And at that time, you know, my household was kind of homophobic. Nobody in my immediate family, as far as we knew, were members of the LGBTQ community. And so it was something new and something, I guess, for me, it was overwhelming. I actually, when confronted, I passed out, seriously, because I didn't plan it. It was after a night of drinking and partying, and that was the last thing on my mind. I was confronted by my parents about being gay. At that point, again, because it was nothing planned, it was out of my control, um, it was a psychological experience that allowed for me to slip into depression. Um, But again, I had support systems outside of just my family, because from high school, I was always involved in the work of advocacy for at-risk youth and at-risk persons. So even though I kind of knew that these experiences happened to individuals, I didn't think it could happen to me. And that's, again, because of a lot of social constructs. And those social constructs allowed for me to believe that you can be a gay person on the down low, and you can be a successful young man, thriving by being on the down low, and you could just get on through life, doing whatever you do. But as long as you don't rock the boat, just as long as you don't make anybody uneasy or you don't come out about your experiences. But unfortunately, again, like I said, persons found the need to alert my family, and they approached me, and it was, again, overwhelming because I was prepared to deal with that circumstance. Now, that leads me to the greater point. Why we're having discussion. Why is visibility important for the LGBTQI cause? Before I actually speak to the scientific reasons, or the reasons why the research founded as to why visibility is important for the community, and then it goes on to the whole reasoning behind Pride, I would wish to hear some responses from you. What is visibility? What does it mean to you? I see we have some participants. I know Gerald. I see he's on. I hope he's listening. I know he normally has a good insight on issues as such. And I don't know if any of you guys could help me out here and contribute to the discussion.
Well, I'll take
Sure.
it. Okay.
Thank you, Ruth. So the importance of being visible, right? You can hear me? I don't know if you
I can hear.
can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, so the importance of being visible, I think it's really about for yourself first, it's about self-acceptance. It's about knowing who you are as a person, and that visibility, within yourself that allows you to be comfortable in your own skin and to be comfortable with the life you want to lead, however that looks. And then when you begin to, I guess, express it outside of yourself in your communities, in your relationships, people can understand, okay, this person exists in this kind of way. I may not have expected that. And I can begin to transform how they view people in the community. Because when they can put a face to a name, they can put a face and say, okay, this person I love, who I cherish, whose time and energy and relationships I enjoy is also a member of this community that is sometimes reviled by people. How does that make me feel? How does that, impact my own, relationship or expectations of people in this community? And I think that's really the power of being visible, first for the person themselves, and then for the relationships and communities they exist in. It transforms how people view, you as a person, but also how they view your community. Yeah.
And interesting that you said that, because it piggybacks on the clip that I was playing earlier, and it's so sad that the audio didn't come through, because what it speaks to also is that there are allies in the community who need that information. They need enable, and in order for them to be enabled, they need to have that sense of sympathy and empathy. I mean, I guess depending on which angle you're coming from. But in order to do either, they have to understand exactly what it is to be an LGBTQI person. And for a lot of persons, that's confined to what they've experienced, what they've seen on TV, what they've seen on social media. And so persons who wish to be visible and members of this community, and who wish to self-identify as members of this community, there's a great degree of responsibility, even just based on what you said. Persons, in order for them to sympathize with what you're going through, they have to understand what you're going through. And sometimes, and I don't want to decide the conversation in terms of speaking from the angle of what my observation of some persons who are members of our community who self-identify, they sometimes exploit that. they exploit certain angles of our community. Yes, being a member of this community may mean that you're a sexual person, but it doesn't mean that that's all that you're about. So, you know, you don't want to identify with just one aspect of what it means to be a member of this community. Even for me, personally, when I was growing up, part of the reason why I couldn't identify with a person being openly gay is because all I saw on TV, and a lot of it was controlled by my family and uh, friends, high school friends. You know, was not. It was controlled by them. And the only persons I could identify with as being gay was, you know, somebody flamboyant, and you know, and that's okay. But that at that point in my life, I could not see that being my reality, because it's not what I saw myself as being to be comfortable. What I saw myself as being to be comfortable is being someone who loves someone who they genuinely care about. And at that point, I could see him being another man, but I couldn't like, really put my finger on it. Like, okay, I really want to be someone out there, you know, twirling around, and that's okay, because at the end of the day, at this point, when I get happy, I twirl around, even if it's a matter of just self-expression. But at that point, I could identify with that, and that's why even as a member of the, I guess, the LGBT community who sees themselves as an advocate, I'm careful to when I am publicly, I guess, publicly showing myself off, I don't do those things. I would want to show the best aspects of the LGBTQ community and those things that are fundamental, whilst not denying who I am, a gay man. But at the same time, I'm not all about a man who has sex with men or who's sexually attracted to men. You know, I am a human being, first of all, and you know, I'd want to show you how much of a human I am. Firstly, before I show you just that I'm only simply a gay man. I don't want you to see me as a gay man. I want you to see me as a human being. But before I go any deeper, is there anybody else who want to share what their perception or their validity of being visible in the community is or means?
Well, if I could say, I think,
Sorry,
you know,
could you introduce
no
yourself?
matter.
Could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm Aaron Green,
Mm-hmm. I know,
local
but I just want to make
human
sure.
rights advocate. Yeah, no, I feel you.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how personal the act of or the process of coming out is for someone, is, you know, by the wider society and by, you know, by people around, people who don't agree with homosexuality, you know, quote unquote, it's viewed as a political act, right? It's viewed as an attempt to do something. So, you know,
The
no matter
political,
how
the gay agenda.
small, you know, someone wants that to be, or so, you know, innocuous, like I'm just outing myself to a couple of friends, you know, I'm just going to tell my parents, or I'm just going to wear this bracelet, or, you know, I'm just going to wear this t-shirt. It's viewed as a, you know, it's viewed as a political act. And so people, you know, so to like someone like me, an advocate, someone who's really out, you know, it may appear that people are cowardice, right? But the truth is that even those small acts can be extremely frightening
Mm-hmm.
for people, and extremely visible, right? Extremely visible.
And you know, to me, to be honest, I think um, looking back, um, even though I was, I guess, forced to be outed in that kind of way that I personally can identify with, the reason what made it so traumatic, it was because it was initially with that personal, the most personal persons in my environment. You know, my breadwinners and my parents. You know, they are the persons I repose the most trust in, and unfortunately, they cannot identify with what I was going through, because again of societal constructs and a lot of other things. But again, too, I think that we are in the midst of a change. If you look at the 2018 congressional elections, for example, there was, I think, the first transgender congressional representative elected in the U.S. Congress, and it says a lot, you know, from where to where America has come, and it has, and you know, being an openly trans person, that's a lot different than being an openly gay person in the United States of America, because we could trace back to Harvey Milk, his successes. Some will argue failures, but history will, I guess, remember him for a lot of his successes as it relates to being out and visible and what that has meant for politics, being an openly gay man. We look at Pete Buttigieg and how far he's made it in his bid for presidency, being an openly gay man. So we've seen in this hemisphere where there has been movement because of the visibility of the LGBTQI community. However, I want to also say that there's the aspect of benefiting the allies, but there's also the aspect of benefiting the internal community with persons coming out. For example, there is about 6.4% in the most recent study of celebrities on social media platforms and commercial media platforms who identify as openly gay and lesbian, bisexual, transgender. And they've done a lot of studies that show that increase in persons being reflected in media has been congruent with the political support and the widespread support of persons being able to identify or support persons in the LGBTQ community. I say all that to say that persons who actually watch and see themselves through gay persons being open and being successful publicly, they're able to say, well, okay, that could be me. Not necessarily being an actor, or not necessarily being a person on a commercial or an NBA star or NFL star, but I can be publicly accepted. And so that is why, in my view, it is important for those who are ready, those who are mature psychologically and able to, I guess, in our own way, exploit that being a celebrity for the advantage of advancing the cause of being LGBTQI, and persons who are able to empathize because of their own interactions with society and their dispositions of being LGBTQ by some, I guess. But I want to ask, in your view, do you believe as a gay person or a member of the LGBTQI community that it is your obligation to become visible? Whether that is when you self-identify, whether you self-identify internally and present it publicly, or whether you are someone who's outed, that you actually embrace it. Do you think there's a responsibility of the individual who knows that they're gay to come out? I'd like to hear somebody's viewpoint on that.
If you would look into the comment section, I think Gerald is addressing along those lines.
Okay, Gerald says, I think it's also important to understand the dangers of visibility also, especially in a culture where there exists a lack of protection for those that are visible. Additionally, there's a danger of visibility where those who identify as LGBTI portray and exhibit behaviors that don't necessarily represent accurately who we are as a collective. And Gerald, to be honest, I'm glad that it's coming from somebody else, because I didn't want to dictate the direction of the conversation. Totally, that is. And yes, you know, you can use visibility as a positive tool, or it can be used adversely. I started to hint at it earlier. We're at a point where social media is playing a pivotal role in the day-to-day activities of everybody. I mean, this is how a lot of persons get their news. This is how a lot of persons communicate with their family members. This is even at work. This is the reason. I mean, this is the way or platform that persons communicate. So when you have persons who are members of the community and they are, I like to hope, to be maturely, psychologically ready to come out and be open, and they use that to project a certain aspect that is negative to the community, then of course, persons in the Bahamas, for example, where we're not exposed to as much maybe as other parts of the world where there's a LGBTQ channel and there's classes about sexuality. No, that doesn't exist in the Bahamas. So the only thing that they know for a lot of persons about what it is to be gay is when they go on Facebook or WhatsApp and they see someone looking for 1,000 likes. So they post the most absurd or profane thing, and then they attribute that to them being gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, or intersex. And they don't know that in doing so, it can adversely affect persons who are actually in the household with someone who may be psychologically deprived. And as far as they're concerned, okay, if being gay is all about sex, or being gay is all about illicit sex or drugs, then they may project that onto a young person or somebody who is not, I guess, even to that level of maturity to even deal with coming out. And then here it is, you have somebody who's battling with their sexuality, and it can lead to a lot of other psychological issues, such as depression, anxiety, or what's not. Now, as far as it relates to our culture and the consciousness that already exists, that's why it's so important for us as individuals to know where we are at as an individual, and know that if you are as a gay person and you are psychologically mature enough to come out and to deal with issues that are plaguing persons, some members of our community, that's the reason why it's so important for you to do your part and be an advocate and to be responsible once you're doing so. You know, it doesn't make any sense for Alexis to be advocating for the rights of transgender persons and trying to educate persons on what it means to be transgender if somebody is producing a counter narrative to that. So I hope that addresses what you mentioned, Gerald.
Can I say though that I think we run dangerously close to some respectability politics there, right? Like it's not the same way to come out, right? Like, because I don't think that people are obligated, or to be visible for the sake of the wider community. It's a choice that people have to make for themselves, considering, a lot of dynamics that the public just cannot be aware of. But I think in the same way, it's dangerous to say that, all members of the community must maintain a certain sort of public expression or a certain standard of behavior, because that's going to be easier for us to get liberation, or because it makes my work as an advocate easier, right? Like, yeah, we don't want, first of all, we don't want members of our society to slip through the social security net and wind up using drugs as escapism, right? Or having to turn to sex work and then working in unsafe environments, right? But we also, don't want to say to people like, look, we're gonna have to marginalize you, or we're gonna have to exorcise you, or we can't really acknowledge you as a part of the community because you're making us look bad. We've got drug addicts, heterosexual in the heterosexual world, right? The drug addicts are homosexuals, they're heterosexuals, some are trans people, right? Because in that respectability politics, we say, look, if you're not behaving a certain way, then you're not deserving of these rights, or you're not participating in the process of us getting these rights, so maybe you don't deserve them. We got to be, I think we got to be careful to acknowledge the way that respectability politics is used against our community, right? And then to sort of challenge that at its core and say, hey, look, even if you think she's a crack whore, she deserves access to housing. She deserves access to healthcare. She deserves access to medical care, or, and mental health care. And there's no going around it, right? And we just have to find not a narrative, but we have to invest in policies that that make these services accessible to everybody, regardless of who they are, I think, you know?
I agree. And I like a quote from Hillary Clinton. She says, women's rights and gay rights are human rights. And so sometimes we have to get back to the basics. You know, a lot of persons, they say, well, why gay persons or lesbians or transgender members of the LGBTQ community, why are they advocating for their own special rights? And I get, you know, we have to meet them halfway, because a lot of them would not know that there is a power disparity between members of various communities and at-risk communities. However, a lot of persons need to understand that the conversation is about everybody being a human. And so, yes, it is true. Anybody, whatever disposition they may find themselves in life, they are deserving of human rights. Now, the problem becomes when certain aspects of human society is left out as it relates to being afforded those human rights. But I think when we talk about persons who are visible, there is a great, I think if we go walk it back to the early part of the conversation, we're focusing more mainly on persons who are visible and in some respect leaders, whether it be on social media or those platforms and like. They actually, it's almost like, you know, when Christians would say, the only face of Jesus that someone may see is that who you is in you. You know, you being the Christian to another individual. And I only use that as a reference to say, you know, as a gay person being visible, in the Bahamas in particular, I would like for everybody to know that you being visible, you have a responsibility to know that you may be the only openly gay person that another Bahamian knows. And so when you project being gay as being something, persons take that on, and they, you know, some people, unfortunately, they tend to characterize all gay persons as what they see in this one or two particular individuals. So when you see Alexis may do a post or a video and it may only get 100 views or 500 views, but someone else from the community may post a video and it gets 5,000 views. That's okay. But when it's not okay is when it comes counterproductive to what the work is in advancing the community as a whole. And I've witnessed, and I don't want to cite any particular circumstances happened recently, but where persons have, I guess, jump on the bandwagon of sensationalism, and they have hijacked a cause unwittingly and had to walk it back. But then the damage is already being done because, you know, again, whatever is done in the community, you know, sometimes on social media can be highlighted as what is going on totally in the community. I see Tori is asking a question.
Janeiro, this is William. Hi everyone. It's not Tori, it's William. But,
oh, sorry, I read
yeah,
in the chat for Tori.
Yeah, I know, I have Tori's account. But my question is this. Yes, it may be counterintuitive or productive to certain degrees, but if that person solely believes that what they're saying is their agenda, if that's what they believe, is it counterintuitive to that person? For example, the agenda may be very, very off topic, abortion. But if someone believes abortion is wrong, they're going to go with that narrative. Does that make sense? Am I the only person thinking that? Because if I don't believe something that the entire community is going with, is it not my right to say it? Am I not still being visible to show it, but show it in another form? Because every community has multiple persons with multiple beliefs.
And I agree with that. But I would think with that topic as an example or hypothetical, I think that for me is not exactly what I was speaking to. I was speaking to issues that are universal to LGBTQI community, for example, as it relates, and I will speak predominantly from a sexual and reproductive health aspect. I should have mentioned that earlier. I spent most of my years coming from a family planning aspect. So there are certain things that are factual and fundamental as it relates to sexual and reproductive health. And so, for example, and I can be, if I can be explicit here, and I hope nobody's under 18 is on this live. But someone
Hey, we're
"Oh
actually
yeah,
on Facebook Live as well, so we're not able to monitor the persons who are there. So please do keep it PC.
oh okay." I won't use the expletives, but okay. As a gay person, if Alexis is simple, I'm gonna make it very simple. Alexis is posting posters about safe sex, responsible, be responsible, wrap it up before you slap it up, and then I'm there. All gay people, we like to be brave, be brave gay men, and be go there and be skinning out. That is counterproductive. That's counterproductive to from the avenue of sexual and reproductive health. Okay, and so again, I guess it boils down to us as members of the LGBTQI community to know, there are certain things that are universally an affront to our community, whether it be stigma or discrimination. And we know from research that there are some things that more so than others lead to stigma and discrimination when it comes to the HIV/AIDS pandemic, when it comes to unemployment, when it comes to poverty. And so different things that can be highlighted from the persons who are leaders in our community. There's a great degree of responsibility. I mean, to whom much is given, much is expected. If you're going to say that you are a social media influencer or you're a leader in social media, then you have to know that you're leading some degree of people. And so whatever you spew out of your mouth is going to inevitably have results, whether it be adverse or constructive. So what I'm saying is that visibility is important, but just as important is your visibility doing what. Again, I'm not going to point a finger and say, you always should be good, or I'm going to pontificate that, everybody should be evangelical. But at the same time, if we want to be taken seriously, we have to do things seriously. I mean, again, I don't mean anything specifically when I say that, but there are some things that I could go on and on about that. And I see Gerald is posting, what if we shift the narrative? That just like any other community that exists, heterogeneity in the gay community, that is different behaviors, qualities, and experiences can be presented by our community. So it shifts the focus on one type of gay person being visible and focus on the fact that diversity is a commonality we all share, and that fact qualifies us for human rights. Visibility, like you said, comes with a lot of pressure, and I know if anyone can present a perfect image. Excellent. Excellent.
If I could say something, is that cool?
Yeah.
All right. I was gonna say also, I think, I don't know, a little bit of what you're saying for me panders to respectability politics, and I say that because when you use the example of safe-sex practices, this is also one of the reasons why we talk about, because we're not in the bedroom situations and we're not in the everyday, I guess, we're not right there being able to tell the people what to do. So they could come, for example, if we set this up, a lot of times when people go to have sex, they may be inebriated, they may have had, a few drinks, they may be on some psychedelic drugs, and that all of that practice goes out the window, right? I think what we've been instrumental in talking about is the need for people within the community to be on PrEP, right? Because that helps to mitigate the whole aspect of HIV, contracting HIV or AIDS. And I think that when it boils down to it,
Natira, sorry, I didn't, not to interrupt, but just to stick a pin. Um, is there? I know Alexis is in the chat, and I just want to make sure that the information that we're sharing about specific treatments and what's not is properly represented. And is that factual, Alexis? Alexis?
In regards to counteracting with PrEP,
Yes, that PrEP is to mitigate, as he said.
PrEP is an option used for the community in accessing healthcare. It is an option given to our community based on the scientific fact and survey that there's an epidemic in our community as it relates to HIV. So to counteract that, PrEP is an option given to our community for that.
But okay, so you're saying you know that PrEP is an avenue to mitigate. I guess we're specifically mentioning my reference to safe sex.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're saying that PrEP, because as far as I know, PrEP is to work in tandem with the already established contraceptive and method of condom usage and safe sex. Not to mitigate, because I just call the word to mitigate. So
even without the condoms, right? Yes, the practice is that they again. I'm speaking. See,
but that's not true of all bodies.
What I'm trying to say is that they are the standard. They are the best practices, and they are the lived realities of what is actually happening. And all I'm saying is that yes, we want you to be as safe as possible, but in the event that you don't have a condom, right? PrEP would be the best way to prevent you from getting HIV and AIDS. Yes, it is, because we had a doctor on who talked about this.
Whose perspective are you looking at it from? Whose perspective?
Okay, hello, sorry, back. I really don't want to change this into a PrEP conversation, but I'm going to again speak as.
Well, I was using that as a.
Sorry, I'm going to just speak as a professional from reproductive health background. As far as I'm aware, PrEP is to be used in tandem with other safe sex precautions, and for the sake of not turning this into a debate about what is safe sex, I would just like for us to stick to what PrEP is commercially thought to be used as. And I hear you, it being a real life situation, but it's a real life situation that a lot of persons illicitly have sex, and there's a real life situation that a lot of persons do not illicitly have sex. So we could debate hypotheticals in another setting, but I don't.
But this is not a hypothetical.
Latino, again, that what you're saying, me personally, I feel is like that if as a health professional, I can't sit here and allow you to say that. Sorry, Can
I intervene here for 1 minute? How you doing? I wanted to say hi. I had my hand raised. Somebody invited me into the room. My name was Van. I wanted to say hi.
Okay. Okay. Sorry about that, Van. I see.
How y'all doing? It's good. This is a good, healthy conversation. Thank you for having it. Thank you, and thank you for inviting me into space, Oliver. I'm stateside.
Okay, Van. It's nice to have you. Sorry about that. I saw your hand raised a moment ago, but
I just wanted to ask a question around that piece around all bodies being represented in recommendations, because male trans men's health is not looked at in these terms, and when PrEP was being looked at from a research standpoint, our bodies were not taken into consideration. Also, the ways in which we use contraception is not always condoms. It is also IUDs and other things that protect the cervical areas. So those things have to be considered when we enter PrEP conversations. That's what I wanted to throw out there.
Agreed, and again, and I am aware, but I don't know, and I don't want to take away from it, because I want you to continue from where you were going on. But again, I will say, as a sexual reproductive health professional, I cannot just
say that word, mitigate.
Yeah, mitigate.
Yep.
That's because when you say mitigate, the implication to many, because word choice is important. The
It
implications to
is.
many is that
I stand with you. Actually, I'm standing with
yeah,
you with that word mitigation. I'm with you.
yeah. When you say the word, when you say that, you know, I can just be on prep, and mind you, that is the biggest problem that health professionals have with prep. And and mind you, if there would be persons who are in communities where prep is not even being considered, and they would take that clip and they would use that clip and exploit that as a reason for why prep should not even be considered as a treatment option, because there's a perception that persons and the members of our community would use it as an avenue to mitigate, quote unquote, the spread of HIV/AIDS. But
Let's bring it
you
back.
know, again, to me, that's a different debate than just being visible in the community. So
Let's bring it
before we
back over
continue,
our visibility topic.
Oh, so I can speak now?
Go ahead.
I'm going to stand on my premise, and I'm going to say exactly what I said, because I know what I'm talking about, right? Now, you guys had your turn to speak. Now, as a healthcare professional, you can say what you need to say, right? But from the conversation that I had with Dr. Morgan, he talked about persons whose partners are HIV positive. And they said to him that they're not having sex with their partners who are HIV positive, and obviously their viral load is next to nothing, right? It's very low. And he said that they're not having protected sex with condoms, but they are on PrEP, and they're reporting to him that every time they come back for the HIV test, they're reporting as negative, right? I'm saying to you, the best practice is that PrEP should be used with condoms, right? Yes, I agree with you. I'm saying in the event that that does not happen, it should mitigate, as from the studies, it should mitigate the transmission of HIV. That was not my point. I was bringing that up for a bigger point, which led to visibility. And I'm saying that what you're trying to do, or what I hear, is respectability politics. And is this kind of idea that as activists, you have to say the right things. You have to do the right things. And I think that that's what Gerald's point was leading to, that there's a particular way that you have to carry yourself. You can't cuss. You can't talk about porn. You can't do this. You can't do that. And I've told Alexis about this, and I've said this particularly. That's not how we want to start the movement, or that's not how we want our movement to be perceived, because we've already watched a movement do that. Martin Luther King Jr., the Black Civil Rights era, they kind of propagated that kind of rhetoric, and that rhetoric only leads people to tolerate. And it doesn't leave space for you to control the narrative and take the conversation where it needs to go. Because where the conversation needs to go is beyond just LGBTQ people, right? It needs to discuss sex workers, which we have yet to discuss in the Bahamas, right? And which LGBTQ people make a percentage of, right? But I'm like we want to be very careful in that we're not pandering to this kind of idea of what is respectable and socially acceptable in society, in Bahamian society. That's what I was talking about. That's what I was setting that point up for. And I was actually using that for a bigger point. That was what I was going to say.
okay, and that's
Thank you for that.
that's a very good contribution. But again, I hope that I didn't come up to everybody as just pandering to respectability politics. But again, respect is respect, and for some persons, it hits home when you say, you know, okay, yes, we should not, I guess, pander to certain members of the community in terms of our speech or the way that we present ourselves, because, you know, by doing so, we may end up negating persons who may fall under those outskirts of not doing so. But then again, there has to be the real debate and a real discussion about persons who are home and they're being parented by persons who, see, it's one thing to grow up like Janeiro Bullard, whose parents may have had a degree of homophobia, but yet once discovering that he's almost being openly gay, I mean being gay, you know, they're going to support him. But then there are some persons who would, like we just came to realization a few months ago, who would beat someone's testes or to beat a child's testes or physically harm someone for being LGBTQ. And again, I'm not saying that that a person may not inadvertently through their speech take things for what it may not be, or that we are responsible for how people perceive things. But at the same time, there has to be a resolution amongst us as the members of the LGBTQ community that this is what we stand for, and this is what we want to advocate for. And I always bring it back to human rights. And I you know, forgive me if I may have not used the best illustration when I spoke about certain aspects of the gay community that may be highlighted in this in social media. But I just, for me personally, and again, I only speak about me personally, I have a personal issue when there are positive aspects of the gay community that are not highlighted as much as the certain things that I know personally that are an affront to members of the community that I can relate to. And it's one thing to talk about hypotheticals, but then it's also one thing to speak about people that you can relate to. And again, you know, I don't discount that you may be more in touch with members of the community than myself. And I do not negate the fact that Gerald may be in touch with more members of the community than I do. But this is why we need to have a discussion to find out what are the universal problems that are in front to the LGBT community and how we should be visible. Because it's one thing to say to be visible, but visibly doing what? At the end of the day, history, or in the minds of some people, they will attach a stigma to whatever they see, and especially in the Bahamas, when there's a great degree of persons who are rumored to be gay, but they lead successful lives from the comfort of their homes, being in the closet, quote unquote, but rumored to be gay. So why can't you be that way? So in order to counteract that narrative, you have to break through. And for me, my experience has not been being brash and in the face and being so, I guess, dissonant to what the everyday occurrences to the average Bahamian is. I found me being comfortably gay comes with a great degree of responsibility, with being responsible, with persons being responsive to you in the way that you would like. I mean, that's my reality. And again, I know everybody again would have different experiences, and I assume that there are persons who are out there who are in the closet, and they would have a very different discussion than I would have in terms of what my experiences would have been when I came out. And probably with you, that's different from you, you know, and different from you, Van Michaels, and different from you, and different from my friend Aaron. So Van, oh, sorry. I think Van wanted to say something earlier. I don't know. Did that? Good. Latino?
One of the things that I've heard a lot in the community, and it's been mostly, I guess, from those who would have been a bit older. And we touched on this last week when we were talking about what it means to, what decolonization means, right? In order for us to decolonize the space, we have to get rid of this kind of mentality that we have to exist in a way that doesn't disrupt or isn't dissonant. The fact that you're LGBTQ means that you are dissonant, right? I've heard a lot of people say, okay, well, does he have to be so flamboyant, right? What you're deeming as flamboyance, right? Or what is deemed as flamboyance, that's a way to police people's bodies, right? And then I've heard people say, oh, well, you think they have to be so loud? Do they have to be so in your face? You know, or I've heard this narrative, there's a time and a place for things, right? We cannot accept those narratives if we want to accomplish what we want to accomplish. Now, I get that may be a personal preference for people, that they don't feel like they have to do that, but that's I want to ask the question, Could that be because you have a degree of quote unquote success, and because you've acquired quote unquote an amount of wealth that affords you have a privilege that you don't have to be like that, or that you don't have to exist in the way that those persons are existing. And I think that when we start to say, okay, well, that there has to be a particular way that you exist that doesn't cause an affront, we don't allow people to be their authentic self, right? And I think that instead of us, because what we're doing is we're participating in a kind of policing of people's bodies, a kind of policing people's speech, a kind of policing people's posting. Watch this. Unless they're doing something that that demeans and outright hurts another individual, like allowing someone to exist in their way that they do, I believe in allowing people to be as free as possible. But what I do not want us to do is to adopt a mentality, a heteronormative mentality, because that language is heteronormative. The language that you're using, that you're trafficking in, that because you're using bits and pieces. And I know that you said that you weren't using the best language. The language that you were using was very heteronormative. And I think that what you're doing when you do that is you're moving us back into a space where we don't need to be. We need to move past that, and we have to get rid of that language. And we need to introduce new language.
Yeah.
Can I say for a second, to complicate it, you know, as an advocate, one of the things one of the things that I had to face was that, you know what, the majority of this community wants as close to heteronormativity as they can get, right? Like, as a anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist activist, I realized that even though I didn't want to have a conversation about Christianity and the church and gay rights, like I wanted to have a legal discourse, I realized that the vast majority of members of the community identify as Christian, and that's the conversation they want to have. And so, you know, I'm all for getting rid of respectability politics because, you know, I wasn't well dressed enough, I wasn't femme enough, right? I wasn't polite enough. My hair wasn't combed properly, you know. Like as a public advocate, there were tons of people in the community who refused to stand behind me. And a part of that is about their own visibility, but also because they felt like I wasn't the right advocate, right? Because I wasn't the right type of queer woman for that job. It felt like, you know, I on the verge of butch presenting, locks, don't comb my hair, ain't into pearls, ain't into suits. Like Alexis looks lovely in a suit, right? I ain't into wearing no suit, but that really impacted my work and the support I got from within the community as well. That, you know, that layer of respectability politics. But the truth is, vast majority of the community, I think the vast majority of the community want want to maintain their faith. They don't want an advocacy or human rights that's separate from their faith. And in the same way, a lot of people in the community, they want a heteronormativity, right? Because they see it as safe. And we could talk about how there are other options, right? Like that there are other spaces and there are other ways to be in the world. And for me, it's about imagining not just beyond the heteronormative construct, right? But making sure that what we see as want to talk about a homonormative construct isn't just a response to heteronormativity, right? Like I want to be able to imagine beyond these constructs and what our relationships could look like if we forgot this language, like amnesia, and created our own language. So, you know, I don't stand for the respectability politics because I think it's problematic to the ultimate goal, right? Of allowing people to live lives free of violence. And it's impacted me personally. but I also understand that people feel safe in heteronormativity, you know, and they've grown up, like, you know, before they knew who they were, they grew up with all these Disney movie and all of this painting of this heteronormative life. Their whole lives are constructed around these ideas, you know, and so while we can challenge them and we can encourage people to imagine beyond, it's also important to, you know, to treat people gently as well. And as advocates, right, like that's our job. But we're smart enough, and we're smart enough because we're committed enough, and we're committed enough to spend the time to think about it and to practice the empathy necessary. But we're smart enough to come up with strategies where we can push this sort of ultimate goal of people creating a space where people could live a life free of violence, right, without inflicting what feels like violence on other people. Because whether their assessment of what's happening is like quote unquote real or not, what they feeling is real, right? And that, you know, we have to work with that.
And Aaron, I think you put it a bit more eloquently than I could have probably put it, because I want to contextualize what I would have said when I was being extreme in my language of, I guess it was considered by some people as being extremely heteronormative. It was based on a place that I was being very real, at a place that I was as a young person, and why I personally, where I was at the age of 18, was unable to come out or to live an openly visible lifestyle. And in that regard, I think even at this age, I still can empathize with persons who experience that. And I mean, even from my experience, I think I can sympathize with persons who go beyond that. I mean, persons who I know, who I've assisted, who've been put out of their homes because, you know, they exhibit things that may not be accepted by some, that are not heteronormative. And again, I'm not citing anything in particular because I don't want to cause the conversation to get caught up on anything on those specifications. But the general point that I'm making, I guess that you made, Aaron, is that as advocates, as leaders, we have to be considerate. I mean, yes, we know what is good. You know, everybody knows what is good, but some people need to be led to the water to drink. And the only way you can lead the water to drink is not to point a gun at their head or not to roll them over, but to, you know, bring them along. And sometimes, you have to meet them halfway. Sometimes, it requires equal amount of research and equal amount of human element in terms of knowing that, okay, if this is how persons have gone through life culturally, socially, and economically, they're going to be at certain different points. So a person who is a rich white person coming out may be different than a person who's a black poor person, or even a black rich person. It may be a whole different experience. And yes, we know what the ideal is, but at the end of the day, as advocates, we have to be responsible in terms of trying to make our approaches far-reaching universally as much as possible.
I'd like to jump in here. Again, the visibility costs. Many persons have different experiences as it relates to visibility. For example, paid persons in our community, and we have to stick into the context of our community here in the Bahamas. For a person to come out and tell their parents that they're LGBTI, that comes with a price. That comes with them having to conform to a heteronormative way of living, because that's the only one that pays the school fee. That's the only one who keeps a roof over their head. That's the only one who gives them food to eat. That's the only way they have a chance of survival. After having counterparts that come out as visible, and they see they get thrown off the house, and they end up in a life of homelessness, they end up in a life of sex work, they end up in a life of sleeping around and being promiscuous just for something to eat or a place to stay. Their visibility story is totally different from most of our visibility stories, who can navigate this thing called life. So we have to understand that visibility comes with a price. Unless we have programs in place or options in place for people to come out, then we can talk about their experiences and saying, hey, you don't have to conform to a narrative of heteronormativity living under your parents' roof. Some people just have to hide to get by. And that's the reality and the context in our climate and in our country. But then we have some people who come out to their parents. They're in a loving environment. The parent accepts them. The parent is like, okay, once you don't be like those type or them, once you have a job and you can provide for the house, you're accepted. But again, I always go back to my friend in Baintown who can't be visible. So he got to play rough and tough. Because if he don't, the mom's going to send the brother to beat him up if they find out that he's gay, either through somebody telling, and sometimes it's our own community members who expose each other. So my point is visibility comes with a price, and everybody's visibility experience is valid. So when I talk about those people who can, let's even talk about visibility in the church, visibility in politics, who are known LGBTI community. Visibility looks different for them because they have a job. They can go to work, they can navigate, they can be the office queer or the office LGBTI. Because why? They have a degree of education, they're respected, they can write policy, they can function and they can navigate. So their visibility is totally different. That's why they can sit and bash openly gay people, because they don't have to worry about being thrown out. They don't have to worry about where their next meal coming from. They secured. But what about our brothers and sisters who can't? And that's what my visibility conversation is at the grassroots level of how do we get those persons whose visibility, they're open, they're out, they're queer, but because of that visibility, they're thrown to the street.
Alexis, I think that you made great points. But I was speaking, and definitely I acknowledge everything that you said, because you're correct. Everyone's visibility is different. But I think that what I want to do is that, or the group of persons that I was really mainly targeting is those persons who are in those loving environments or who have the wealth to protect themselves. That's what I was speaking to, right? And if you, for example, if you have the wealth, right, and you have no need to fear anymore, and you've set yourself up, right, and then you use that as an opportunity to bash. No. That's not visibility. You have become the oppressor, and that's something that we have to make them aware of. And I think, Aaron, you brought up a point about it feeling like violence, right? And Aaron brought up the point about being kind, right? And I get this a lot, right? Because people think that my approach is a bit brash, cold, whatever, abrasive, you want to call it. That's fine, right? I look at heteronormativity like cocaine, right? And if I'm going to get you off of cocaine, right? It means cold turkey. It means that you don't have it, right? It means that we have to let you sweat it out. That process is violent. If you've been addicted to it, that process is, I've never been on it, but from what I know of the process through research, right? You know that process is very violent. You have cold sweats, you have these hankerings, you need to get it, you get agitated, you get, hives. That process is very violent. But after you come through that process, you're able to be sober. And so I think about heteronormativity as a drug for LGBTQ people, right? We're hooked on it. And in order for you to get out of that, in order for you to stop using that language, which is the language of the oppressor, in order for you to stop being and acting and thinking that that you are the oppressor and oppressing yourself and policing your body, and in order for you to stop doing that to other people, this is a violent decolonization process. I'm not inhumane for putting you in a room and allowing you to sweat that out and get it out your system. In fact, I am humane. And I think James Baldwin puts it like this. He says, if I love you, then I must tell you what's wrong with you. I can't remember the full quote, I'm paraphrasing it. But he says, if I love you, then I must tell you the truth. about the situation. And so this situation calls that we need to address the LGBTQ people who are intent on upholding heteronormativity within LGBTQ spaces. It is no longer acceptable for that to be happening. And if we're going to become a community, I was reading one of James Baldwin's pieces again, and he was talking about the white community and how that's a farce. So I was trying to figure out, and I was saying, okay, well, if the white community is a farce, then it doesn't exist, right? Because he was like, in order for them to become white, they have to become inhuman or unhuman, or inhuman, right? Not human. And I'm thinking, if this holds true, right? And I just think about it. If this holds true, then what's happening is that when people try to hold on to these heteronormative ideals and not embrace who they are, when they use the language, when they're intent on, and I think Aaron too, I'm not saying that you can't have your Disney princess. I'm not saying that you can't have church. I'm just saying that you have to look at those institutions in a brand new way. And it may mean that that there's a violent kind of process, internal work that you have to do. And so now, again, everybody's at varying levels. But I'm mainly talking to the people because they are significant. And I'm not afraid to say this. There are a significant amount of LGBTQ people who are successful, quote unquote, who have the money to avert all the stigmas, all the prejudices, because they live out west, they live in condos, they live in this and that. And it makes no sense not addressing the issue. I address elephants. The issue here is, even if you don't want to come out the closet, the least you can do is, wherever possible, you contribute to the community in that way possible. And that's what I was more speaking to. I understand that everybody's position in life, socioeconomic status is different, but we have a plethora of LGBTQ individuals who don't have to deal with a lot of the realities that we're talking about. And they can help move this process along much quicker, right? We could pick up momentum with as many people running behind us, pushing us forward, giving ideas, giving feedback, giving strategies. If you can't give money, you give money. If you can't give time, you give time. And with those things happening, you galvanize the community in a very fresh way, in a new perspective. And that in and of itself is the reimagination. When people are willing, you talk about price, everything, this whole process comes with a price. It means that the life that you got, it means that the life that you kind of got going and got you into your success, you may need to adjust again, because if you're gonna be supporting the LGBTQ community, there are certain things that you have to do. You have to make changes.
Latino, there are some people who really don't, our own community members don't want to support it because they are fine. That's why for them, they have two options: be successful in Nassau or get on a flight to Canada. And that's the reality. And we need to understand the community that we're serving, the grassroots communities that we're serving.
Again, and again, that's why I want to piggyback on what you just said, Alexis. It's a struggle. It's not easy. It's just saying one thing, and just because you say it, it is. There's a matrices that you have to take into consideration. Everybody's different. Even not just their experiences, but the way that they internalize things. So I can see somebody who is rich or has a different socioeconomic status and say that, oh, they are well positioned to make a positive change in the life of many LGBTQ persons because that's who they should identify as. Again, that's all relative because of how I feel or my opinion. But at the end of the day, we may not be we may not be privy to what that person is dealing with internally. And you'll find a lot of those persons who may be in leadership positions or may be rich, may be in a higher socioeconomic status than others. They have a lot of internal stigmas. They have a lot of internal problems and psychological issues that they are dealing with themselves. So again, we have to take that into consideration and how that affects the grassroots community and how it affects us all as members of the LGBTQ community. Because, everybody has their opinion. opinion is just like the thing attached to our rear ends. Everybody has one. Everybody has a mouth. Everybody has a rear end. Everybody has eyes. Everybody has an opinion. But at the end of the day, unless we are positively affecting the community, and we could just be going around in circles. Even knowing what is good. But at the end of the day, we have to be able to communicate to the persons who need to be able to to put themselves in a position to do better for themselves.
There's a comment I want you to read that Gerald had put into the chat.
Okay, what about people who are somehow caught in the middle, being told that if they become visible, they will be persecuted and ostracized, so they live lives bordering on the supposed homonormativity. Then they seek protections from what they believe to be safe places from LGBTI leaders, and are told they can't be helped or be a part of groups to force positive change. Gerald, that's a very interesting point, because that's very interesting. Alexis, you want to take that on?
I want Tino to take that on.
Give me 1 second, please. I gotta.
Okay, let me read this, because I was trying to process it. I thought she was gonna take it. What about people who are somehow caught in the middle, being told that if they become visible, they will be persecuted and ostracized, so they live lives bordering on the supposed homonormativity. Then they seek protections from what they believe to be safe places from LGBTI leaders, and are told that they can't be helped or be a part of groups or force positive change. I think, Gerald, this is actually a very interesting question. I think I've met
very good question.
Oh, this is a very good question.
And it's relative to now. Go ahead.
Yes, it is. I think I've met a few people who've communicated this kind of struggle to me, that they want to be a part, but they, because they don't fit, I guess, the mold, or they don't seem like they have it all together, or whatever the issue is, they feel almost trapped in between. It's like this weird space. Now, for me personally, I'm like this. I believe that everyone has the ability to lead, right? And I believe that that wherever you find yourself, as long as you're willing to be a part of the conversation, I make space. As long as you make space for me, and we're being open and honest, I make space for everyone. I want to be honest. I'd really have to think about this answer, because this is a difficult position to be in. I really think that a lot of people inhabit this space. I'd have to think about this answer. I need more time on this, because I don't think I've investigated enough this very nuanced position that a lot of people may find themselves in. So I'm going to say that I don't have an answer. I don't know if Erin would be more equipped to answer this.
Okay, and this is actually forces me to speak, because it actually is a space I found myself existing for years, where I wanted to be a part of the change, but I found myself being caught in what will happen to my career, what will my family say. I want to be a part of this change, but then when I join the conversation, I'm kind of pushed aside because I'm not as visible as I should be or could be. So you find yourself in that awkward space. I mean, I battled it now. I found a way to conquer it now. Like you say, I think you just like to find your niche into it. Somehow fitting yourself into the conversation wherever that lies, and recognizing that contribution is good enough.
Yes. But I would say this, right? When you talk, so as you were talking just now, right? I would say to you, and as you continue, right? The pushing to the side, the not feeling like there's space. I think that sometimes the structures that we are within sometimes do that to us. So it may not always necessarily be the leaders, but the way that the structure, so we're set up in capitalistic, imperialistic, patriarchal systems. And the way that they're set up is that if your voice is not as loud as mine, then you don't get a position at the table. Or if you've not been doing this over a certain period of time, then you don't get a position at the table. And you are correct that you are enough, and that the work that you're doing is great. And this is and so when Alexis was talking, my whole thing is that wherever, my only thing is, I just need you to get your hands on the thing and work it. However you decide to do that, that's fine. But what I don't want us to do is fall back into these positions where, oh, we say Alexis has this because she been doing this and she's straight, she's the one leading this. I don't want us to do that. Or Latino is doing this and so they don't need me. I don't want us to fall into that. And I also don't want us to fall into the heteronormativity and using that as a reference point. I don't want us to fall into the fact that Aaron has always been doing this so we could just leave them, right? We need all hands on deck. And so Gerald, what you've been doing is enough. However you fit in, wherever you've been able to contribute, and that's the beauty of it, because the people that you get to see, I may never encounter. The people that Alexis sees, I may never encounter. The people that Aaron sees, Tori sees, William sees, like I may never encounter. But it's through those communications, and it's mainly the internal work. When we get rid of the oppressor inside of ourselves, when we get rid of the heteronormativity and that expectation to live according to that kind of way, that's when real change happens. Because we're no longer existing for straight people or heteronormative people and the systematic structures that go along with them. But we begin to chart our own course as LGBTQ people. And that's what I'm talking about. And so what you're doing is exactly what needs to be done. Other than that, I think I probably have to really do like a real study just to quantify exactly what you're talking about. But theoretically, that's what you're doing is exactly what needs to be done. Anything else, now to enhance that, we need extra data for that. But I think that what you're doing is you're finding your niche, you're doing it, and that is good enough.
I make a
Very
point.
well said. I want to take the last 5 minutes to open the floor for questions and comments.
Alexis, can I make a point on that and a point in general, right?
Okay.
When it comes to visibility, there's no right or wrong way, because there's a commonality and there's common threads to everything that was said and shared. Everyone is not in a place in their life when they want to get in front of the camera. Not everyone is in a place in their life when they want to say something. And the fact of the matter is, not everyone can eloquently execute something and get out and speak. When it comes to visibility and where we are right now in the country, I think it takes a myriad, multiples of people to get anything done. So yes, saying that maybe if I become visible, this will happen or that will happen or the other thing. But there's also the back end of things. For Alexis to be visible, she needs help. For Latino or Tori or any of us who do anything, we all need help. You can always reach out to a public advocate and say, how can I help? I don't want my face on a poster. I don't want to be on the news, but I can help, whether it's proofreading, whether it's looking at financials, whatever it is. We all as a community have a skill set that is different. And it's when we bring our community together, we are able to push our community forward, whether it's becoming visible or becoming more healthy. Maybe Pride is not what you want to help with. Maybe you want to help in another avenue or angle within our community. And it's just simply finding the person who needs the help. And most times, once an advocate is on the ground doing work, they will never tell you, oh, I got it, or I could do everything. Because it's usually so many things that one person needs to do on any one given day and in any time, that as long as that person is a real advocate, they will always take the help. They will bring you in, they will train you, they will help you to see the backside and the underbelly of the things that most people do not understand that happens. And that will help to broaden your horizons. And that's how you get to being, the advocate that a lot of us are in our own rights and in our own fashions and when what we do. So, you know, for you personally and how I would approach that question, I would tell you, think about it. Think about what you want to do or how you can help the visibility, how you can help with the PrEP discussion, how you can help with decolonization, and get back to any one of the advocates and say, look, these are my skill sets. This is what I think I can help with. How can I help? And that's true for anyone watching this, whether it's here on Zoom or it's on live on Facebook. You know, all of us on Facebook or some form of social media, our country is small. We know how to find each other when we need to. So it's time for us to get together. And even if we don't want to be the person in the front line, to be the person standing in the second line or in the third line. And it's time for us to pull our community together and make it what we want to see. Because if we don't make it what we want to see, we will never see any profit or anything move forward in this country. Alexis, that's all you.
Very great intervention, William. I do thank you for that. I concur, and you took the words out of my mouth, what I was going to reiterate. However, I want to go back to last week with Clarissa's question. In regards, we said that we will take this up, and for the next 5 minutes, we will open the floor for questions and comments from our viewing audience. So Clarissa asked last week, and we said we're going to talk about this because we want to talk about visibility. We in this community need to start listening to ourselves. Time after time, Zoom meetings, health seminars, testing are spoken about, blasted through social groups, social media for us to educate ourselves and come together as a community. Yet, when it comes to the crunch time, we don't want to be a part of it. We turn a blind eye, we ignore ourselves. Persons in our community try to do whatever it is to make our community better. Persons in our community try to assist. What can we do to assist us? But how much of our community actually wants to be present, actually wants to be visible, wants to listen, wants to make a change, wants to stand united? What is stopping us from building us, educating us, helping us, and uniting us? And this is from Burkitt, Cameron Knowles. Anyone can take that. What is stopping us? I think what is stopping us is the lived realities on the ground for many of us. Many of us don't even understand what it is to be LGBTI. Members in our communities don't even know the acronyms of LGBTI. Many of them don't even understand that they are a citizen of this country first, before even identifying as LGBTI. Many of them don't even know their human rights as a citizen of this country, being LGBTI. So I think what is stopping us in our community is a lack of knowledge, a lack of awareness, and a lack of sensitization to who we are first as a citizen in our own country. What is available to us in our own country? What is available to us as a human being existing in our country? So I think what is stopping many of us is the lack of education to what's available for us. When our community first started, it came out through an HIV/AIDS epidemic. It never came out from a human rights standpoint or as a Bahamian citizen standpoint. It came through a health issue. And that's the only way LGBTI terminology or acronyms are used, so you will find in documents. You don't find them in public, you don't find them in housing documents, you don't find them in education documents, you find them through a health entry point aspect, based on the fact of how LGBTI communities became visible and they begin to merge. Through legislation and policy, we decriminalized homosexuality in 1991. Do you know that most of our communities don't even understand what that means? Do you know it was illegal to be who you were or who you are in this country based on one legislation? But in 1991, that legislation has been removed. Do you know that there are countries to this date that still have that legislation and they are criminalized for who they are in the Caribbean, but yet they're still pushing through? But we here in the Bahamas who have decriminalized don't even know the access and the rights that we have and the ability that we have as Bahamian LGBTI citizens. So I think it comes from a lack of sensitization and education. And I think that's why the campaign for education is important and sensitization, starting within our own community before we can venture out into the public. And that's what is Pride, and that's what Pride is about. Pride is about educating and sensitizing our community through a week of activities of understanding who we are as Bahamian citizens, what's available to us. But before we label ourselves, we must first know who we are as individuals. How are we going to navigate as a human being in this country? Everybody don't have the option to go to Canada. Some people are forced to go to Canada, and some people, it's their human right if they want to go to Canada. So we have to look at all of these avenues as a human being first. How do we see ourselves in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, individually or collectively? And I think that's why we don't have most people who want to participate, because they probably don't even know how to participate. Again, there's a lack of technology. Most persons don't have access to an internet. They go on their phone and they scroll. They don't have because of this COVID-19 pandemic, many of our community members are without financial resources. So I guess the best thing they could put data on their phone is to be able to get an app to see when the job is going to call them back, to see when they're going to get back to work. These are the things that our community is facing. We're facing this as a country and as a citizen. So as an organization and as LGBT people who have resources, let's go ahead and let's help our community, putting $5, $10 phone card on their phone. These are little small things that we can do to get them educated, to get them sensitized. And that's what we're trying to do, making small inroads. But again, I think it comes because of a lack of knowledge and the resources for our community. We don't have a community center. We don't have a place where they can go and get information. But now we're getting to that point where we're building a resource information center. They can go online. The Bahamas Organization of LGBTI Affairs, we're going to start posting our information and sensitizing, and through little chat groups, little forums, to give them the tools that they need to navigate, first of all, as a Bahamian citizen. Anybody else want to answer, Clarissa? They can. Rest, I'm sorry. Okay, so no, that's it. All right, so is there any comments or questions from the audience before we wrap up? Just checking the chat. So if there's, go ahead.
Well, not a question, but a comment. You know, the organizers of Pride, pretty much everyone is doing it out of love for the country and for the community. But for everybody that watches this, I'd like to challenge you to do this. The email for Pride is there. Write and tell us what Pride really means to you in your own words. Just so the people on the back end know that you appreciate them. Let's do that. Let's see how, you know, we all really feel.
Great intervention, great comment. For those who are maybe listening, the email is pridebahamas@gmail.com, pridebahamas@gmail.com. Also, you will find information in regards to our remembrance tree. At Pride, we will be placing the names of persons we've lost to violence, death, HIV, illnesses, suicide, all of that. We will be placing their names on a tree branch. And the reason the symbolic tree branch is that we don't want families to know we haven't forgotten them. We still have unsolved murders in our country of LGBTI persons. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that we have this wall of remembrance, this tree of remembrance for the persons. You don't have to put what they died from or anything like that, just the name of the person. And that's your token and that's your tribute to that individual. Also, you would see there the links inside of the chat box. Our presenter the beginning link that he wanted to share with us, and then the closing link. You can look at those links and copy those links to go through the presentation. I would like to thank our presenter tonight, which is Janeiro Bullard, who brought the topic tonight on visibility. Thank you all for participating. Thank you all for your contributions and interventions. Special thanks to Gerald. I enjoyed the commentary you posted inside of the chat box, because what it did tonight, it challenged the status quo. It challenged the normal thinking of how we perceive our community. And like, everybody's not on the same level in this community. There are junglists in the heterosexual world, and there are junglists in the LGBTI world. But again, how that junglist access healthcare when she go into a hospital is totally different how a trans person will access healthcare when they go in the hospital. So we have to talk about these disparities and these inequalities that we have as human beings first, and then branch into our communities to the disparities that we may have. Next week, we will have another topic. Next week will be led by Latino and Ide. The following week, leading up to our Pride, please pay attention to our YouTube pages. We are on social media. We're on Instagram. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We're getting there. We're pushing the information out. So there's no more excuse that, hey, I don't know. Now, if you refuse to not know, that's fine. That's on you. But you don't have this excuse, oh, we didn't know this was happening, or we don't have these kind of conversations back home. But anywhere I hear around the world, I mean, everybody's engaging in these types of conversations. So we want to make sure that our community is engaging also. Once again, thank you to all our Zoom listeners and all our followers. Does anyone have anything else to say?
Yeah, so I'm gonna post a link for next week. I don't know what I call it, right? But I have something that I want you guys to read. It's 10 pages, but as much of it as you can, as much of it as you can read.
This thing, your social
wait.
You know, 10 pages, that's a lot, you know, that's a lot. Get the smart notes, get the smart notes.
Okay, so, no, watch this. If you can read the first 2 pages, that would be great, right? But the reason, if you can, no, I don't want to put a limit on it. If you can read the first 2, that would be great. But if you can read all 10, it would be great. It's by James Baldwin. It's a great piece. It's called Hair Be Dragons. And he's talking about androgyny. And he's talking about when he was walking around in New York City and how the boys would grab him and catcall and do all these things to him. Trust me, you'll love it. But if you can't read all, go for gold. You only required to read 2 pages. Now come on, you can't beat that. I'm gonna post the link down here, and we're gonna work it, because I have some questions that we'll talk about and we'll discuss. But it's to kind of give us it's kind of to contextualize and see what was happening in America then, and how things have been happening in the Bahamas even now, and how those things still exist. And so that's what I want to do. And then I guess if Ide want to chime in, he want to help me on that. That's what I think of. So I'll give you 2 pages. There's only 2 pages.
So next week is you, and then the final Ide will bring
Ide thing on.
Right. Okay.
All right.
Perfect. All right. Make sure to put the link there before everybody signs out. So.
All right. There's the link, guys, and I'll see you next week as well. I enjoyed the conversation. Yeah, I really did. It was nice.
William, could you copy that link onto the Pride comment section so they can have this underneath the video? And they go back. But yeah, it's 9:40, going on 9:45, and I promised myself at 9:45 we're going to respect the time of our Zoomers. Thank you again, Zoomers. Thank you, Priders. Thank you, Bahamian public, for listening. This will be replayed and shared on our YouTube channel that is up and running, the Wadika, to make sure that the information is out there. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Don't forget, wear your mask, social distance, wash your hands. We are still in a pandemic, fighting COVID-19. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your night.